Hello guys, welcome to the introduction to Ajax tutorial. In this tutorial we'll be going through what Ajax is and how it works. I'll be doing the basics of it so that if you're a beginner you can understand what's going on. For this you have to firstly know jQuery, and to know jQuery I have another tutorial on jQuery covering everything about jQuery in one tutorial, so you have to go through that before coming on this tutorial. So if you've gone through that, then you'll know almost everything, you'll understand almost everything in this tutorial. Okay, I'm using EasyPHP as my testing server, and EasyPHP as my testing server and Context as my text editor. I have a folder with the name tutorials. This is basically all the folders which I'm using. This is the folder which I'm using in all the tutorials. I've named a file test.php. I have my phpMyAdmin as my database. I have the database set up with the name tutorials, and users is a table used in the previous tutorials. So we can create a new table according to the tutorial. So let's start. Firstly we need to, I just made the basic tags for a page here. I've also included jQuery.js here in this, and this is a script here. That's the starting of, if you're writing a jQuery, you need to start off by writing that. Okay, so basically firstly we'll do something we'll make something in which you are posting you are saving some data to the database using Ajax. So in order to do that, we'll just make a small form here, and all the forms which you are using and through which you want to save the data and transfer data using Ajax. For that you have to make this form, and the action of the form should be blank, and the method actually on submit should be returned false. There's no method for this. And close the form, and then we would have an input type as text with an ID of say my text, and you can just style it in some way. I'll just style it for like about let's say 400 pixels with a height of 30 pixels with a border of 1 pixel solid black, and with a padding of 10 pixels, and let's say font family to be Wordana for now, and font size to be about 15 pixels. Just that everything is big and you can see what's going on. Okay, that's the form there. I don't want the outline to be displayed, so I'll just remove the outline there. And yeah, that's our input type. And I would also make a button there with an ID my button, and with styling I'll complete button there, give it name like submit or anything which you like. It'll have a width of say 100 pixels, height of say 30 pixels, background color say anything which you like, and the color of the text should be white, font weight should be black. I'm just going through the styling of the button. It's not necessary, just make it look good. And yeah, okay, we don't need the border anymore, we don't need any padding there, and yeah, we need the cursor to show as a pointer. Okay, refresh that. Okay, that's our submit button there. Okay, now what we are going to do is when someone writes something here and clicks the submit button, we need that data of the input type to be saved in the database here. Okay, so we have this here now, and okay, let's start with the jQuery and Ajax. Basically it's Ajax. Okay, now to do that, firstly we need to save the data once the user has clicked the submit button. So firstly we need to detect that the user has clicked the button there. In order to do that, we need to target the button there. If you followed my previous jQuery tutorials, you'll know what I'm doing right now. So it's important you follow that tutorial before seeing this. And okay, when the button is clicked, we need to declare a variable with the name my text. It can be anything, it's up to you. And then we'll save the value of the input type in the variable my text. So it's in the ID of the input text is my text, which is here. Okay, dot val. So that basically takes the value of the input type and saves it in the variable my text. Now to validate, for example, if there's nothing in the input type and if the user clicks on the submit button, it shouldn't do anything. So in order to do that, we can place an if statement, that is if my text, that is the variable. Now we don't need to write var now because we have initialized it once, so we don't need to initialize it again. So if my text is equal to nothing, that means if it's blank, you don't need to do anything, so it's returns false. Okay, and then if it's not blank, we need to do something. So then we need to save it to the database. So in order to do that, we need to create one more variable, let's say data, and then this is the data which you would be sending it to the Ajax. So var data is equal to, in the single quotes, you need to write the something which you are sending to the other file. So basically, firstly I'll tell you what Ajax does is, so let's say you have a file test.php. When Ajax fires up, it takes your data from test.php. Using Ajax, it transfers your data to another PHP file, and it is up to you which the name of the PHP file can be decided by you. Let's say it is test2.php. so here in between, Ajax plays a role, is that when you click something, when you do something using Ajax, the data is transferred from test.php to test.test2.php without refreshing the page, and that's why it is called Ajax. Full form of Ajax is I'm not sure about the spelling here, asynchronized JavaScript and XML. I guess that's what it means. I'm not sure about the spelling of asynchronized here. Anyways, that's what it means, and that means it does everything from back to back. It doesn't show the user what's going on, so it doesn't refresh the page there. So that's what basically Ajax is. So test2.php. Now when the data has been transferred from test.php to test2.php, you can get the data in test2.php like just normal form. So for example, say you had a file test.php and you would use a form, basic PHP form, that would have a form with an action test2.php. What it would do when the user clicks the submit button, it actually goes to test2.php by taking the user to test2.php, and then it does everything written on test2.php. So in the first thing which you write in test2.php in the case of a PHP form is that you fetch the variables by the post method. So by writing by giving the reference of the name of the input types. Let's say your input type is text and it had name. You are normally give a name to the input type in the case of a PHP form. So let's say it is my text, but here in our text PHP form the action is nothing, and when you click on the button, if you've written an input type is equal to submit, it doesn't do anything because we want it to fire up the script here. So instead of taking us to the blank page, that doesn't make sense. So that's the reason I've taken a button here. So here I notice that I've not given any name here to the input type text, but in the case of a PHP form we normally give a name, and using the name as a reference to the posted data, using the name as a reference we gather and store, initialize the variables. But in the case of Ajax, the ID of the input type text is used as a reference in spite of having the input type text. And you can also give a name here, but that wouldn't help in anything. That's the reason we use the ID as the reference for transferring the data from test.php to test2.php. And in Ajax you do the same thing, like post, and in the quotations you are using my text as the variable, as the reference to fetch the data from the previous file. So here the difference is only that you are taking the ID of the input type as a reference to fetch data, and in the PHP form you are using the name of the input type as a reference to fetch data. So in order to initialize the reference texts here, you need to create a variable which would store all the references in it. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I've initialized a variable with the name data, and I'm in quotations I'm going to initialize the references for each of my each of the things which I'm going to transfer to the next page. So we're going to write my text is equal to quotations close, then we concatenate it by adding a plus, and then we write the variable my text. Okay, now what's the difference between my text and this my text? So we've noticed that I've written my text is equal to inside quotes, and in JavaScript if you write anything inside quotes, that is taken as a string. So that is not a variable here because it is written inside quotes. So that's what, and here equal to is stripped off using Ajax functions, and only the other string is taken as a reference for the other page here. So this is the reference here. So for example, if I write here my text 2, then in our other page you have to change the reference to my text 2. If you change the everything from here, like so let's say my input type, then you have to change it to in the next page my input type. So I hope you understood that part. And my text here plus is like concatenating something to this string, and we are concatenating my text the variable. If you don't write any quotations or anything like that, that means you are saying that it is a variable. So it checks whether the variable has been initialized. Yes, the variable has been initialized here. So my text is the variable, so it takes that my input type as a reference is equal to this variable here, which is in turn equal to the value of the input type text. So okay, so that's the data we are sending. Let's say, okay, let's end that line by adding up semicolon there. Now for starting the Ajax, you need to write $.ajax. Many people also use .post, but as we are doing an Ajax here, I use Ajax. Okay, now open the parenthesis bracket, then the curly bracket or flower bracket, whatever you say, and then the curly bracket closes, parenthesis closes, semicolon. Then you need to separate, go in the center of it, separate it. I recommend you use this this practice for writing, so that you don't end up by forgetting that you had to close the brackets there. So that's how you tend to decrease the ignore the mistakes, silly mistakes you make there. Okay, now when you open the Ajax, first thing you have to write is the type of method you're using to transfer this data to the other file. The type we are using here is post, so it is written in double quotes. You can also use the get type data, sending the data using get, but I would recommend you use post. Then you write it in double quotes, add a comma there, go to the other line, and then the next thing is adding the URL. The URL is the name of the file to which you are transferring the data. So in our case, as we had said, it is test2.php, and so now it is test2.php. Close the quotes, comma again. Now the next thing is the data. It's actually the data which you are sending to the other file. The other file is test2.php. So what's the data which you are sending? It is the data. So don't be confused here. This data is actually a built-in function for the $.ajax function, and this data here is equal to the variable, this data here. So this data is not equal to this, and this data here is equal to this data. So why am I not writing this in quotes? So if I write that in quotes, as I had told before, if you write anything in quotes in JavaScript, it thinks that it is a variable. So that's the reason I didn't write in quotes. Add a comma there, and then you write success. That success is actually something like what happens when the data has been successfully transferred to the file test2.php. So when it has been successfully transferred, we need to initialize a function, and inside the function you you write data here, and that data is equal to the data coming back from test2.php. Okay, now what's the data coming back from test2.php? Let's say I'll just remove the other part here. Let's say when you have transferred the my input type and something like that here, if you've sent the data, and the data here basically the value of the input type. So let's say you fetch that data in this other file here and store it in the variable var, and then what do you do with the data? You insert it into database, and you would also want to use it or modify it. Let's say then after doing all your functions here, after doing all the functions, anything you can do, anything in the PHP file, and then using all the data, you echo out something normally in PHP files. So here you echo out the data. So if, for example, if you echo out thank you, sorry, if you echo out thank you, then anything inside the double quotes, that means anything which you are echoing is actually the data which is coming back here. So here the data inside the function is actually the whole data which is coming, which is being echoed by test2.php file. So what do we now? You've got back the data from test2.php and you've stored it in this variable here, data. You did not actually initialize that, because it has been initialized here. The data has been, firstly the value of my text. It has been sent to the test2.php file, and that variable now has the data coming back from test2.php. So it does not have my input type text anywhere now. So it is now basically the text or data coming back from test2.php. So now what do you want to do with that data coming back from test2.php? You would want to print it, you would want to add it to somewhere on your test.php file. So let's say we want to add it somewhere below the submit button. So in order to do that, we need to firstly create a space, or give it tell it to store the data somewhere. So in order to tell it to do it, we can't just tell the JavaScript to print the data, because it would ask you where to print it. So we normally make a div with an ID, my div, give it a styling, let's say width 400 pixels. I wouldn't give it a height, because we can actually add up data as much as you want. So I'll just give it a border of 1 pixel solid black, and yeah, that's about it. And I'll give it a padding of 20 pixels. Yeah, that's about it. And yeah, so I can write in the success bracket, I'll write the ID of the div, my div dot HTML, or any way of adding the data. So all the types of adding, all the types of how to add data to a div or any object can be seen in my other tutorial, which explains how jQuery works. So I'll just do HTML right now, and HTML the data. HTML is like actually printing the data. So I'm actually taking this data here and printing it in my div here. So it is .html data. So that's there, and yeah, that's the Ajax part done here. That's it. And also after the success, like after the data has been transferred to the test2.php, and after the data, and at the same time the data has come back to test.php successfully, you have done that. You want to print it in the my div, and also you can also clear the input type text field. For example, if you're writing something here, after pressing the submit button, it doesn't actually submit the page. If it would submit the page, it would clear out the input type here, but you've done it from the backend, so it does not clear the input type. So in order to do that, if you can add one more thing here, and that is the ID of the input type, and that is my text dot val, make it blank. So here you're doing is, after the data has been printed in my div, you're actually clearing the value of the input type here. So anything written in the input type gets cleared after successfully submission of the data from one file to another using Ajax. Okay, so that's about it. Now we have to make the other file test2.php in which our data would land up from test.php. So now you need to initialize variables. Let's say text is equal to, I'll just save the file with the name text2.php in my tutorials folder. Yeah, text2.php, and I'm fetching the data. So right now I won't focus on the MySQL injection things, so I'll just fetch it using post here. So normally in so normally here you would write the name of the input type file, but as I explained you before, you have to write this part here, not the equal to, it is this part here. And then okay, so the all the data coming from test.php has been saved in this variable here, $text, and now you would want to actually save it to the database. And I have my other file which connects it to the database. Just open that. It is actually to the, okay, yeah, no problem. I'll include that file which is actually the connection to the database, and then I would want to save it in the database. So first we will create a new table in the database. So I'll just create it like text. It will have an ID. I'll auto increment it, and then it's a text. So after including the db.php file, which is basically the connection, yeah, text, and then data type would be text, and yeah, save it. Save. Okay, made the table now, text, and yeah, that's the ID, and the text are the columns. Okay, now in our test2.php file, we need to save the fetched data in the database. So we need to insert into text, and that is ID and text. So we don't need to insert the ID because it is on auto increment. The text is here, text. After everything is done, you would want to say echo out, you would want some confirmation that the text has been added to the database. You can echo out the something like the text colon, and then text has been added to the database. Okay, so if the text has been added, you echo out this. So this echo, everything which you are echoing is actually the data here, which I told before is the data. So you're actually printing the data inside my div and then clearing the input type. So yeah, that's it. Let's test it out. Okay, so that's the div which we had made, nothing there. Let's say we write this is my first text. You click submit. So it comes back, the text colon, this is my first text, has been added to the database. Let's check the database here. Yeah, that's the first ID, and the text is, this is my text. So and the input type has been cleared. Let's say this is my second text. Before doing that, I would want to actually go to test2.php and give bold tags there, so that you can differentiate that our data is in bold, so that it makes it easy for you to understand which is our text actually in this whole line there. So I'm writing, this is my second text. Okay, this is my second text. Let's submit that, and again, without refreshing, this is my second text, and that's the data there has been added to the database. Let's go to the database there, check, and yeah, this is my second text there. So basically that's about it. And let's say if you change the .html data and change it to append, save, you need to refresh the page there, and let's say test1, submit this, and then you don't need to refresh the page, test2, submit. Instead of writing the second line, it adds up, it just appends the data on below the first data. But here you don't see it in that way, because there isn't any break tag, or actually you don't need to, you need to add the break tag before the next data. So refresh the page, testing1, submit, that's data there, then testing2, submit. So you can see, okay, testing3, submit. You can see that the data is being appended from below. And if I refresh the page, it disappears because you don't have any PHP script here in your div which would actually fetch out everything from the database and display it on the page. So Ajax, every appending data is actually a virtual instance. So okay, now instead of append, if I write prepend, note that if you write append, it actually seems like a chatting application which you can make. So that's a hint for you how chatting applications work. So okay, I've used prepend now. Let's see what happens now. Refresh the page, test1, submit, test2, submit. As you can see that test2 is being added from the top, whereas append was adding the text from below. Test3, submit. That's how prepend works. So basically that's how Ajax works, and let's say, so in the same way all the forms in websites like registration forms or login forms work. I just quickly do how login works. Let's say you are logging in. Let's say you're logging in, and so you have to actually I won't make the password field now. Let's say you have to type in XYZ to log in, and any other text other than XYZ won't let you log in. So using that as a reference, I'll just show you how login works. Everything would be same, and just only this part would change, and in test2.php you wouldn't insert it. Okay, you're including the database file, and then you would want to check that by passing a query whether the user is registered with us or not. If then you do MySQL numbers, the basic or whatever you do in a PHP login script, the same thing you do it here. And then when if you name, for example, if you name this as num, and then you check whether the user is registered or not. If num is equal to 1, that means if the user is registered, then you do something, right? Like logging, you do something like, you know, you log in him in the website. So here using Ajax, if you want to log in him, you have to firstly you know, you write echo, and let's say you echo you know, 1 for yes. That means yes, the user is registered and he is you know, approved to log into the website. So if you write 1 here, then you have coming back to test.php, you can write an if statement here. If the data, that means the data coming back from the test2.php file, is equal to, in colons you write 1. That means if the data coming back is 1, then you would want to, you know, direct him to the Windows location, you know, to the profile page or any other page where you want to redirect him to. So that's how it's done. And obviously in the test2.php, before echoing, you would want to start the session and do everything here, and then just echo in 1, or you can echo in anything you know, which is only known to you. Let's say echo you know, 1. Okay, for example, I'll use XYZ as a login credentials. So let's say if text is equal to XYZ, then you know, that means the user is logged in. Then I would you know, start the session and, you know, something like that, and then echo 1 or echo, you know, you know, yes. That means yes, log in him. Or else, if the user is not registered or the password is different or something like that, if there is a problem, then you wouldn't want to log in him, so you would write echo no. That means the user can't log in. So here, if data is, then you have to change here, if the data is yes, that means if the data coming back from test2.php is yes, then you can, you know, redirect him to the specific page. And let's just make a new page for that. Let's say yes.php, and if else, write another if there, else if data is equal to no. That means if the data coming back is no, then you would want to write something or pop up something. But now, for now, I will just write, you know, in the div, sorry, there was a problem logging in. I'll just write that. So yeah, that's it. And then I would want to clear the input type. So let's just make a new file. Let's say you are logged in, which would say you're logged in. Name it as yes.php or HTML, anything, it's up to you. I know it's PHP file, but I didn't write anything there. It's just an example to show you. Okay, so yes.php and test. Okay, so now let's test that. Refresh the page. If I write something like ABC, okay, it's doing something which is not expected. Okay, we have refreshed the page. So there's a small problem there, and that was I mistakenly wrote Windows here, which is actually window, and instead of my div here, I wrote my text. I think you probably noticed that, and I changed a little bit here. I've written the data here because in my test2.php file, instead of writing no, that means obviously, you know, there's a problem there. I would rather write sorry, there was a problem there. So that would become my incoming data from test2.php. So So then I would want to print that in our div there. So refresh page. Let's say we write something else other than XYZ. So if you write other than XYZ, let's say ABC, submit, it says sorry, there was a problem, and page doesn't refresh, nothing happens. It's being done through Ajax. And let's say you write XYZ, that means let's say the username or password was correctly entered by the user, and he presses the button, then it redirects him to the home page or profile page, anything like that, and it says you are logged in. So that's how the logging part works through Ajax, and you can actually validate everything in these pages here and in the yes page also. So that's how basically Ajax works. I hope you understood what it means. It's a simple tutorial. If you have any doubts about it, you can always contact me on my channel. I would be happy to help you. So yeah, thank you, bye bye.